Welcome to another episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast. And in this episode, we're going to talk about blogging. And I have with me Miranda, who is a professional writer, blogger, freelancer, and wrote the book Confessions of a Professional Blogger. So first off, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I want to talk a little bit about your story. How did you start in the world of becoming a professional blogger?
Yeah, so it really started because I wanted to be able to work from home. I had a young son. I had just finished my master's degree in journalism, and I wanted to be a freelance writer. So I started poking around on the job boards and just seeing what there was available. And this was back in 2005. And so this is my 10th year doing this as an online writer. And so this was back in 2005, and I was just poking around on the job boards trying to see what I could find, mostly on Media Bistro because that's where, and also on journalism jobs because journalismjobs.com because that's where journalists go to find jobs. And so I was kind of poking around to see what there was, and I discovered the magic of content farms. And back in the day, like now we're like, ooh, content farms, get away. But 10 years ago, content farms were perfectly, well, not perfectly fine, but mostly fine. And that was the way a lot of people were getting money and making money online and doing the revenue. And that's kind of where I started. And
Really
Robin
quick,
Tippins,
when you
yeah,
talk about content farms, you talking about blogs or like the goarticles.com type thing?
yeah, the GoArticles.com top thing, Demand Media, Yahoo Voices before it was late last year, it is now defunct. But Yahoo Voices, before it was Yahoo Voices, was Associated Content. And that's where I kind of got started. So I had these, I had real jobs, right? I wrote some articles for Discover magazine. I was writing for this physics website and doing science reporting, and I was just doing some jobs here and there, but I needed rent money. And that's when I started going to this content farm. And I was posting consistently on this content farm when Robin Tippins, who is my co-author on Community 101, How to Build an Online Community, and she just noticed that I was consistently posting. And that's who introduced me to the wonderful world of corporate blogging. She said, blogging is going to be the next marketing. For a lot of people right now, they're like, well, of course, blogging is a marketing tool. It's been that way forever. No, it hasn't, right? 10 years ago, blogging was fairly new as far as a marketing tool goes. 10 years ago, when you heard of they didn't even talk about bloggers. They talk about, people just had, really, I mean, they were just people and they're just doing their journal, basically entries online. And so she was like, no, blogging is going to be the next marketing tool. It's going to be the next online marketing tool. And you're consistent. And will you come and write for this corporate blog? And that's kind of how it got started. So I sort of started on these content farms and moved into corporate blogs. And then one thing led to another, and this corporate blog was a money related blog, and I'd been writing about science. Science was what I was doing. I was a physics major before I started doing communications and journalism, and so I was writing about science. That's what I was doing. But then I got sidetracked by money, and then the financial crisis happened and the personal finance blogs blew up, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted me as a staff writer, and here we are. So
One question for you. If you were to start today, would you start with blogging or would you maybe do something like YouTube or podcasting? It seems to me like blogging is becoming there's a lot of competitors in the market, and it seems like YouTube might be a little bit more faster growing, but I'm curious to hear your opinion on that.
right, well, since I'm a freelancer and most of what I do is get paid by somebody else to produce content for them, uh, I would actually, it depends on what your focus is. If your focus is, hey, I want to make a splash in my own thing, I want to build my own lifestyle business, I want to build my brand, I want to do something different, then yeah, like YouTube or podcasting or whatever would probably be the way to kind of catch more attention. I mean, you do need to have your own home on the web. You need to have your website up, your YouTube channel so that you can all create your whole, create your brand image to do that. But if you want to write for other people, if you want to make money from other people and get other people to pay you, there are still plenty of companies willing to pay for content and willing to pay for that written content and willing to pay for that. Of course, if you can show that you can produce videos and do that too, people will probably be willing to pay you for a nice video if you can do a video really well.
If you want to start getting into freelancing, would you recommend starting with your own blog and like showing people you know how to write, or just try to start applying for gigs right off the bat?
Yeah, so I would do both. I would set up your own blog as your portfolio. I did not have my own blog when I started 10 years ago, but today you really should have your own place. You should have your own home on the web where you can showcase your writing, where you can send people. And then while you're doing that, then yes, you can apply for gigs. There are plenty of job boards where you can apply for gigs.
And if you have your own blog, can it be just like a journal, or should it be something a little bit more professional?
Right. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with it. So since I have a niche, I write about money. That's what I mainly write about. When I finally decided to start my own blog, finally, like 3.5, 4 years ago, when I finally actually got my own web property and started my own blog, I chose personal finance because that's the niche I write in. That's where I want to send people to see, well, I send them all over to see my money writing, but that's my main thing to show them. I do have a freelance blog where I write about freelance writing. It's just mirandamarquit.com, and I write about freelance writing on that blog. But it really depends on what you're planning on doing. If you want to break into a niche, if you have a specialty area that you want to write about, then yeah, you need to make your blog about that. So you can send people there and they can see that you're there. It can help you get into the community. One of the great things about, if you choose a niche, one of the great things about being in a niche is building those community ties, and then people start coming to you not just for your writing, but also for your connections. And that's another thing you have to worry about now as a freelance writer. When I started 10 years ago, it didn't matter if you had a lot of connections. It didn't matter how many Twitter followers you had, because Twitter didn't even exist 10 years ago. And when I started, it didn't matter. But now, a lot of these brands, a lot of these people who will hire you to write, they want to know you have an audience. I mean, even regular newspapers, the old school Gannett, the big newspaper giant, Gannett, even they recently put out a whole training on how to build your brand as a journalist. So, I mean, they recognize they're trying to bring in those followers. I know of a couple other major publications that I probably shouldn't name who won't even who won't even let you be a contributor for them unless you have a certain number of followers and can guarantee a certain number of page views when you post, because they want you to bring your following. It's really, as a freelancer, it's becoming more of you have to be a brand that people want to follow, that people are going to interact with.
Do you have any idea what those numbers are? Like how many followers you need, or how many page views you need to get?
It really depends on the publication. I do know there is one publication out there that's like, if you can't bring 50,000 page views a month, don't bother. And not necessarily followers, but 50,000 page views. If you can't drive 50, and that's across all of what you write. So if you write 10 articles a month, if those 10 articles can get 5,000 page views each, then you're good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I do know of one publication who's like, we don't want you as a contributor unless you can guarantee like 50,000 page views a month. You're going to drive that.
So let's say someone has a blog and they're doing some of their own writing, but they want to start getting real writing gigs. You mentioned some places earlier in the interview, but I don't know if those are still relevant. I don't know if that was 10 years ago. Where would you go if you want to get writing gigs now?
Right. So today, some of my favorite places to go is Media Bistro is still, going strong. They have a good job board. It's good, solid media type jobs. You'll find a mix of freelancing jobs, blogging jobs, more traditional media jobs. You'll find a good mix there on Media Bistro. I really like them. Another good one is journalismjobs.com. That's still available if you are in journalism and you're looking for something a little more traditional. That's a good place to go. Problogger.net, and their job board's really pretty good. And then there's the site called freelancewritinggigs.com. and that's one of my favorite. They actually a few days a week they aggregate jobs from all over the place. So like they'll look and see where are the Craigslist jobs, or are these jobs from they'll bring in some from ProBlogger, they'll bring some from a lot of different places. And so it's really nice to just kind of go to freelancewritinggigs.com and get a look at what's out there. But one of the things you're going to run into with some of these job boards, particularly with ProBlogger and Freelance Writing Gigs, is they're not going to pay that well to begin with. So you're kind of stuck there. But those are some good job boards to get you started. And then other places you can go to look for they're called content brokers, where they're brokers that provide content to other places, right? So corporations who are looking to get content for their sites, people who want stuff for their blog, people who want stuff for like maybe catalog entries, just whatever it is. And they're called content brokers. They don't pay particularly well, but if you want steady work and you're just willing to put your head down and go for it, some of these content brokers that work well are there's contentrunner.com, there's writeraccess.com, and there's textbroker.com. And some of these, like Textbroker and Writer Access, they actually give you a test. They'll give you a writing test and they'll rate you. And if you have the highest rating, then you can go for a little bit higher paying jobs. And if you have a lower rating, they won't offer you the higher paying jobs. So there's that kind of merit-based thing going on as well. And then two other sites where you can actually get higher paying work, but they will vet you heavily, are contently.com and skyward.com. And those are two sites where like big name clients go to look for content. And they pay much better. They pay way better, but you're going to be vetted. So it just sort of depends. If you're just starting out and you go to some place like Contently or Skyward, they may not have jobs for you. They may not hire you. But if you go to a place that's got a lower barrier of entry, like Content Runner, then you can find something. You won't get paid much, but you could find something.
When you're first starting out and you're applying for these jobs, like how do you differentiate yourself so that you'll get the job? Do they just look at the past writing, or is there other kind of tips and tricks?
Yeah, so a lot of the time they'll just look at your past writing. They'll look at whether or not you're willing to take it. On these content broker sites, a lot of the time it's first come, first serve. So you just run in there and you're like, claim, claim, claim. And so it really kind of depends. Like once you're on and you're part of like the group, right? If you've taken your test and you've been sorted into a group, it's like Harry Potter, right? In your little sorting hat. But you've been sorted into your group, then you can go in and claim. And sometimes it's first come, first serve. But another good way is, a lot of it's really your writing and your ability to show your social media savvy. And you don't necessarily have to have a huge following, but if you show that you're active, if you show that you do share your items, if you show that you're building a community, you are going to have a better chance of setting yourself apart. And that's, I wish I had this like magic formula, but unfortunately, if you read my book, it's depressingly mundane. I'm sorry, there's no magic formula for you. So
there's already been lots of little tidbits of knowledge. And one question I do have for you, though, is how much should someone expect to get when they're just starting out per article versus like as they've kind of worked up, like approximately?
This is so hard. So one of the hard things about online freelancing right now is there is a huge disparity in pricing. I'd say when you're first starting out, you're probably looking at between $10 and $25 an article to start.
And how long are those articles?
Those articles are probably right around 500 words or so.
Okay.
So when you're just starting out, probably closer to that that $10 to $25 range. If you're on Elance or Odesk or Guru or one of those freelance marketplaces where you're bidding on sites, where you're bidding on work, those freelance work bidding sites where people are like, I have this that I want done, and how low can you go? Mm-hmm. If you go there, you can find the work, but you will probably get paid less than $10 an article.
I've definitely hired people for $5. I have an e-commerce site and I've hired people for $5 just because I want that SEO. And I've had some
Right.
decent results, but I do all the research for them. I say, hey, this is the topic. This is pretty much what you're doing. For the $10 to $25 on those other sites you were talking about, will they give you just a basic topic and say, hey, talk about this or bullet
Yeah.
points? Yeah.
A lot of them will just give you a topic and say, here's the topic that I want written about. And some of them will be like, I need this keyword density, or, use the keyword this many times in the article. This is my keyword. These are the main points I want you to hit. Some of them will outline it a little bit like that. So,
One of the tips and tricks it seems like you've talked about is basically getting a social media following.
right.
How do you go about growing your social media following? And is it just Twitter,
I'm
face,
the,
Facebook, or you do
I'm
some
the
other
worst
stuff?
person to ask about this.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
so terrible. But no, so I don't have a huge social media following, mainly because I don't do as much as I probably should. I share my stuff. If I've written an article for you and you publish it on your site, I tweet it out. I've only got about 10,000 followers on Twitter. I've got like 1,000 page likes, on my Planting Money Seeds page on Facebook. So it's not a ton, but I get decent enough engagement because the community I've built, well, not that I've built, but the community I'm part of is pretty active, and I'm a pretty active part in that community. So it depends on whether you're trying to be kind of a utilitarian writer or a niche writer. Does that make sense? Like
Hmm.
if you're a utilitarian writer and you're just sort of cranking stuff out, your social media doesn't actually matter that much because you're just cranking out stuff and you're just writing about whatever.
Hmm.
If you're a niche, and you won't get paid as much as a utilitarian writer. At least it's been my experience that I have, and I don't have like hard stats or anything to back it up. But it's been my experience that a utilitarian writer who can go onto those sites, like you were talking about, like Elance, where you're just like, I have my e-commerce site, here are the keywords I want, bang out this article, right? Just somebody who can just do a good enough job as a utilitarian writer isn't going to make as much. If you're a niche writer, it's not so much as, oh, I've got to have this huge social media following. It's how engaged are you in your community? So I'm a personal finance writer. I'm in the financial industry, in the financial community. I'm pretty engaged in that financial community. So when brands want me to work with them, and I write for them and I publish something, they know that even though I don't have like a huge number of followers, the followers that I do have are engaged. So it's
So
about building connections and building those relationships and getting well known. And you can only do that through time and meeting people and reaching out to people. And like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years, and it took 4 or 5 years to kind of build that base and build upon that.
so when you say that you're part of this community, you're talking about other writers or fans or everything.
Just everything, yeah. So other bloggers in the community, the brands that you associate with, like the financial community. Like I really enjoy working with, like I've worked with Experian in the past, worked with State Farm in the past, worked with Fidelity. So you work with these companies, and then it's other writers, it's other, and then it's the followers, the readers in the community, the consumers. So it's like it's it's a community. It's just a bunch of people in this financial space, and you can do that too if you're travel is a really good niche community to be in. You probably know that. So travel writers kind of band together, travel bloggers, nomads, minimalists. There's all these groups, parents, stay-at-home dads, stay-at-home moms. You've got all these kind of niche groups, and there are people out there that want to reach them, and that's where you can start making money, is when you start get to the point where you're engaged with your niche, and then you have brands who want those connections to your niche, and that's kind of when you start making more money.
If you had to start today and you wanted to like rapidly make as many connections as
Oh no.
possible, how would you go? Is there Facebook groups like Reddit or some kind of forums, or meet them in person in conventions?
It would be in person at conventions. It's kind of funny to watch the evolution of the online world because 10 years ago it was like, hey, we're online. We never have to look at anybody. We never have to talk to anybody. We don't have to see anybody. We didn't have this video chat thing going on that we have going on now. And so, but now it's, it's all about, okay, well, I know you online, but now I want to meet you in person. I want to look you in the eye and see who you really are. And if you want to make those connections and make those valuable connections and do it quickly, you've got to go where the people are. And most subsets of blogging have their own conferences. So, but yeah, I would definitely say get on social media, find the people in your niche on social media, and then find the conferences.
Awesome. So let's shift gears here a little bit. I want to talk about the actual writing.
Oh
And
gosh.
yeah, I feel like I'm not a great writer, but the ideas are there. If you're someone that's looking to get into writing, how do you recommend improving your skill?
Oh gosh. Everybody asks me this, and the only thing I can say is like practice. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody's like, there's got to be this magic solution. But no, basically it goes down to you've got to practice. Um, you've got to practice. You have to learn proper grammar and you have to practice. I mean, that's
Learning proper grammar. So I was one of
learning
those
proper
people.
grammar. Yeah.
Throughout high school and college, I studied engineering. I was a very math orientated person, and grammar was always one of those things that I felt was completely unnecessary. And now that I'm like curious about writing, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, there's some rules here. And actually, funny enough, when I started learning a second language, I'm like, oh, grammar's kind of actually
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes, yes.
How do you recommend if someone's really bad at grammar that they figure out what grammar is?
One of the things that you don't need to have a lot of formal training to be a good writer, I don't think, but I think it does help to take like a basic composition class. If you have a community college or a local university and you can audit a class, spend the 200-300 bucks it'll cost you to go audit the class and take that writing class and learn how to do a composition, a just basic composition class. Will give you practice. They'll make you use proper grammar. They'll tell you how to properly set up a composition, your opening paragraph, your body. I mean, it's basic stuff, but you kind of forget I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the bread and butter right there, is those basics. Go get Strunk and White's Elements of Style. Go ahead and get that and read it. And then there's this great app. It's called Grammarly. If you're really desperate and you just want something quick to help fix your writing, there's this great app. It's called Grammarly, and you put it in. It's a little plug-in for your browser on Chrome, and it'll pop up in if you're using WordPress or whatever you're using. I keep saying WordPress. I remember when it was movable type. That's what you used, was movable type. So that's how old I am. But anyway, you can use it and it'll work on Blogger, it'll work on all these, it'll work in your email. And so it'll correct your grammar for you. And if you pay for the premium version of it, if you're willing to pay for the premium version of it, it'll help you find other words, it'll help you find better sentence structure. So it'll help you out. And it's a really good app. Another one, if you really want to just get down to the bare bones dynamic writing, it's called Hemingway, and it's like $7. And you put it in, you copy and paste you copy your stuff, you paste it in the Hemingway editor, and it'll show you how to write like Hemingway. It'll get rid of your
Drunk,
extra
I
stuff. Yeah,
assume.
drunk. But it'll get rid of that extra stuff. And if you really want to tighten things up and make it more dynamic, Hemingway is a great tool just to kind of run your stuff through and be like, yeah, I can make this more. I can make it more interesting. So those are two tools that are just kind of quick and easy. But I mean, there's really no substitute for practice. There just isn't.
Is there any other, when you actually are typing, do you use just Word document, or are there any other tools that you use?
Yeah, so I just type it right into the just type it right into the platform. I've regretted that sometimes if my computer's crashed or if my browser crashes. But yeah, I just type it right into the platform. And I do have the Grammarly plugin to kind of catch errant mistakes, and so I just go through and fix those when I'm done.
And what about, like, do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, how do you get over that?
So yeah, I get block. We all do. A lot of the time, if I have writer's block, people are like, "Oh, we'll just start writing and just go." And sometimes that works for me, but a lot of the time, it depends on where I'm at. If I'm just starting my day and I have writer's block, then I'll sit down and just start writing. If I've gotten writer's block and I've already been writing for like a couple hours, then I'll take a break. So it just sort of depends on where I'm at. But a lot of the time, taking a break to read, taking a break to meditate helps me out and it kind of helps me get over that hump. And then if, and sometimes you just have to sit down and start writing whatever's coming through your mind and then it'll eventually go away. But honestly, I find the best cure for me for writer's block is to go do something else. And there are times when I'm like, I cannot think of anything to write. I cannot think of how to start this, or like I'll finish something. I'm like, I still need an introduction. So then I'm like, I'll step away, I'll go take a shower. And while I'm in the shower, that's when inspiration hits.
Sure, absolutely. So the
Yeah.
book that you wrote, you co-authored about communities,
Uh-huh.
is that communities for writers, for companies, or all the above?
Yeah, it's really more aimed at businesses more than anything else, or businesses and like website owners. So that's who it's more aimed at. Like I said, it was written in 2010, and it was really great and up to date for 2010. We should probably go back and do an updated version because we have examples and they're like dig, like, like who does dig anymore? No one. So,
Is there any other things that you'd add to it, like, or you'd change that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably change about half of what's in there just from the way things, whoa, hit my mic. The way things have progressed, I would probably change pretty close to like half of what's in there. And a lot of it has to do with the way you manage your social media and the way you manage your bookmarking.
Now I have a random question for you, but do you
Okay.
have a morning routine or something you do in the morning to get you going?
Yeah, it's called Wake Up and Get My Son to School. So yeah, I get up and I try and get up a little bit before my son does so that I can just hit the emails. I hit the emails and the social media real quick before my son gets up. I get him breakfast. I have, it's brewed dark chocolate. It's called Creo Brew. I use that. I get that going in the morning and I get my son off to school and I have my Creo Brew and then I exercise to sort of, well, I get it out of the way because I hate exercise, but I get the exercising out of the way. And it does help because it helps you kind of focus. You feel good after you're done exercising, even if you hate doing it. And so, and that's what I do in the morning. I get up, I get my son to school, I exercise, then I sit down and I really get into it.
All right. I
Really
have,
basic.
I have one more question for you, but
Okay.
before we get into that, any other tips on how someone could become a better writer, or if someone's looking to freelance, how they can go about doing that?
Hmm. No, I think you covered it with what you asked me so far. Yeah, I mean, really, it's a matter of getting your blog up, getting your portfolio started, and then going out and hitting the job boards. When I first started, I was like, well, I did the content farms, content broker stuff. I did that low paying stuff. I did that for 2 hours a day to pay the bills. And then I spent another 2 to 3 hours a day looking for jobs, either updating my resume or applying for jobs or putting together my portfolio. So I sort of divided when I first started. That's how I divided. I did the stuff that I got just paid for that was cheap and that I could pay my rent with. And then I worked on getting these other jobs.
Great
So,
answer. And last question, do you have any advice for the people in their 20s, or if you could give yourself advice when you were in your, mid 20s, let's say, on how, just general life advice, I guess.
oh gosh, general life advice.
Something you wish someone would have told you, or you wish you could tell the current generation.
Oh man. Sometimes it's ugly. You have to push through. I don't know. Um, Man, looking back in my mid 20s, most of what I would have done differently has to do with my finances. Open an IRA. Start investing. That is what I say. Start investing. There are places you can open an account for $25 and you can start investing with $25. I wish I had started investing earlier than I did. Start investing.
Awesome advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.